This Impact Wrestling review was brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Try it, and the next time TNA have a pay-per-view, they'll actually have the final hype for the world title match be about, you know, the world title match.
Somebody got a haircut. Uh-oh.
Yeah, it was time. I was starting to look kinda shaggy. Does it look good?
That you are no longer a long-haired 7 feet, 500-pound piece of monkey crap. No, you are not.
Ah.
You are a short-haired 7 feet, 500-pound piece of steaming, stinking, grade A monkey crap.
Did it surprise any of you to learn that Sacrifice was this Sunday? Because that surprised me. I mean, I knew it was coming up soon, but I turn on Impact and they say it's this Sunday, and I'm like, really? This Sunday? Wow. I don't know why that caught me off guard. Maybe because I wasn't sure if this was going to be a pay-per-view or one of those pay-per-view themed Impact shows. Maybe because I wasn't digging a lot of the build-up. Maybe because this really didn't feel like the go-home show to one of only 3 pay-per-views, or maybe it's 4 or 5 now, I'm not really sure, that TNA put on per year. With these things not happening very often now, each pay-per-view ought to feel like a really big event. I thought that was the whole point of axing most of them. Sacrifice doesn't feel that way. It didn't going into this Impact, and unfortunately, it still doesn't. And I'm looking at the card on the website here because TNA didn't really bother to run down the full card on Impact. There was this really brief video package that rushed through the whole card all at once, but it didn't show separate match graphics like it should have, and it was really easy to miss if you weren't paying close attention or if you were tweeting during it like I was. So I'm willing to bet that some casual viewers might not even know what every match is going to be on Sunday. And that's not something that you should have to go and search for, okay? I mean, they really should make it a point to spell that stuff out, in my opinion. Just make it impossible for people to miss. Anyway, this is a pretty lackluster card. It's mostly just a bunch of rematches and stuff that wasn't hyped up very well. And I don't think the final build and lack of overall excitement about it is going to do it any favors either. Kurt Angle squashed Rockstar Spud in pretty short order. EC3 attacks Angle in retribution that Angle so richly deserved after his shameless and cowardly attack on wrestling's greatest hero last week. But Willow shows up and runs the heels off. This was fine for a comedy match. Rockstar Spud's really good at this stuff, and I chuckled a couple times. But was more comedy really what this feud needed right now? It felt like that was misplaced on a go-home show. Plus, Willow beat EC3 and Rockstar Spud by himself in a handicap match last week. So why in the world should I think the heels have any chance whatsoever against Willow and Kurt Angle at Sacrifice? I love EC3 and Spud, but once you do something like that, it's kind of hard to regain momentum and take the heels seriously as a threat to these guys again.
Oh, you were not aware of this?
Madison Rayne and the Beautiful People had a promo segment that seemed really phoned in and just felt like they were stalling until the beatdown started. And then, wouldn't you know it, the Beautiful People put the paper bag on Madison's head. Just the same old stuff the Beautiful People were doing years ago that got stale by like 2009. Because God forbid we do anything new and fresh and interesting to update this gimmick since we went to the trouble of bringing it back. And then the Beautiful People have a match with Madison and Gail Kim, and I just did not care about this at all. The match might have been alright, but I was barely looking at the screen. The crowd obviously didn't care either. You could have heard a pin drop in that audience while this was going on. There's nothing really compelling happening here, and there is not one matchup you can make with these 4 women that's going to interest me. Not a single one. I don't even really care who wins on Sunday. Either Madison retains and a boring title reign continues, or Angelina takes it and a boring title reign begins. And why should I care if Angelina wins the title? She's not going to do anything new with it. She hasn't done anything new since she came back, so why start now? She's had the damn thing 5 times already, so this would just be another rehash. And that's all the beautiful people have really been doing. And if you're one of these people who are super excited to see the beautiful people back together, then all due respect, but I think you need to ask yourself some serious questions, because this has been nothing more than a bunch of smoke and mirrors to cover up the fact that the knockout division has essentially gone backwards. Gail Kim versus the beautiful people? We saw this in 2008! Why the hell would I care about it in 2014? It's never going to be as compelling as it was, especially if you don't plan on doing anything new with it. The division should have moved beyond this stuff by now.
This whole show is ridiculous!
If you plan on using Brittany in this storyline in any significant way, for God's sake, please do it soon. And I really hope there's going to be more to it than just Brittany predictably turning on Madison and joining the beautiful people. I'm just saying. Oh my God. Oh my God. Every time I think that this Samuel Shaw, Christy Hemme, Ken Anderson angle couldn't possibly get weirder, they somehow managed to plow the fields of the funny farm even more. Anderson visits Shaw's house. He meets Shaw's red-headed mother, who is also named Christy, and finds out that Shaw not only still lives with his mother, but has a little boy's bedroom in his mother's basement. And then Shaw shows up, and this turns into some kind of bizarre, twisted Norman Bates Oedipus complex thing that I don't even know how to describe. I mean... Oh, Christ. This has got to be one of the damnedest things I've ever seen. It's so awful. This is so fucking absurd that all I can really do is laugh. I may seriously have to just give up on trying to provide any honest analysis here, because I don't know who the hell this feud was meant for, or what kind of audience they're going after with this, but it's not me. So, I'm not looking forward to their match on Sunday. I don't expect it to be good. I have no fucking clue what a committed match is. I don't think TNA ever explained that to us. But if the feud so far was any indication, it might very well be one of the most baffling what-the-fuck scenarios ever seen on any wrestling show in history. And somehow, inexplicably, there does seem to be some kind of audience for this feud. There are people that like it and continue to like it. It was and is getting a reaction, so I guess we have to see this through now. I don't like it. I don't want to see it. But you know what? If you're one of the people out there who are enjoying this feud for whatever reason, then God bless you. God bless you.
I will not participate in this charade this evening.
Sonata had another nice video package building him up. I like that TNA are trying to showcase him as like a successor to the Great Muta and sort of an ambassador for Japanese wrestling. It's nice to see a Japanese talent being presented as a serious, respectable babyface rather than as a heel foreign invader or a comedy character or something like that. You know, this is actually something that you don't see every day. And this was about all the hype we got for the X Division title match on Sunday. And I was alright with that because, well, what else could they do, really? There isn't any story here. Sonata and Tigre Uno had 2 matches, and now the rubber match is for the title. And that's it. It should be a good match. hopefully with more time than the first two got, but without more of a story or feud here, that's really all it'll be. TNA really haven't devoted enough attention to this best-of-3 series or either guy in it for it to mean much, but it should be an alright way to establish Sonata if they just let these guys do their thing and don't overcomplicate it. And just like with that, a video package was all we really got to hype up the tag title match. And in this case, I thought that was the best way to go. This feud has been such a mismatch, there was so little they could do with it in the first place, and they've just been repeating themselves the last couple weeks anyway. I don't think anyone was that eager to see the bromance get themselves DQ'd in a match again, so let's just forego all that stuff and do a video package hyping up the Wolves and the obvious title change that's about to happen, if there's a god. Have the Wolves say your run-in's done, at Sacrifice your joke of a tag title reign is finished because we are gonna fucking massacre all three of you clowns. Simple, but effective, made the Wolves look like stars, and that's all you could ask for. I like this a lot. This was fine build-up. And cheers to them hopefully, finally pulling the trigger on the Wolves this Sunday.
Yes! 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 Yes!
More good build-up. Bully Ray and Gunner versus the reuniting James Storm and Bobby Roode. They have a good match. They hyped up two feuds for Sacrifice. They put some heat on the heels. Storm finally gets a victory over Gunner, and they further tease the future storyline about beer money getting back together for realsies. Again, simple but effective. Nothing wrong with any of this. I thought it was a nice touch that Storm and Roode still came out separately. You get the sense that the beer money reunion is drawing near, and we're not there just yet, but it's getting close at hand now. So they're making people wait for this, really building up the anticipation. So when that moment finally comes, when you hear beer, money, and they come out together, that should get a huge reaction. So this was nicely done. I would like to see more fanfare and hype videos and stuff when the reunion does happen, but I think the build-up to it has been really well executed so far. Okay, a couple things that don't have to do with Sacrifice before we get to the main event. The use of Kenny King is bothering me. I'm glad he's back on TV doing something. But right now they're portraying him as a guy who talks a big game but then doesn't follow through. And this match with him and Lashley was nice. The spot when Lashley caught him in midair was really cool. But Kenny can't beat the guy, so he walks away and takes a count-out loss. Which I guess is better than him getting pinned. But I don't see how booking like this helps him when you haven't even really re-established his character yet. You want to put Kenny King back on the map? Let him beat a guy for crying out loud.
Yes!
TNA, what are you doing with Austin Aries? You bench him for 6 weeks, then you bring him back so he can rightfully complain about being benched and then get jobbed out to MVP. The match was pretty darn good. I have no complaints about that. But the treatment of Aries right now concerns me more than a little bit. I don't care what the reason for this is. Austin Aries is a main event level talent, which, quite frankly, TNA is something you need right now. God help me, I'm actually going to reference Taz here, because Taz basically said that when you've got a talent the caliber of an Austin Aries on your roster, you do not put that guy on the fucking bench for personal reasons, kayfabe or otherwise, or whatever the case might be. Best call Taz has made in years right there. And that might as well have been a shot directed straight at management as far as I'm concerned. But TNA have not been utilizing Aries the way he should be for a while now, and with the roster in its current state, there is absolutely no excuse for that. TNA, whatever your issue is with the greatest man that ever lived, work it out. And stop letting this guy go to waste, damn it.
Oh, my brother, testify!
Well, they did at least try to get this Magnus Abyss situation to make sense in regards to 2 weeks ago. Abyss didn't interfere in the world title match because anyone who did would be fired. Ah, but Abyss, you can't be fired by TNA because you don't work for TNA, you work for Magnus, which Magnus points out. Even though Abyss is still on the TNA roster page, but whatever, I guess we're just forgetting about that. Plot hole! And that's about as far as they got before the inconsistencies started piling up. Abyss says that their arrangement was never about money, he just wanted a friend. Which is head-scratching because he had a friend in Eric Young, who seemed to understand him more than most, who he then stabbed in the back, And then he partners up with Magnus, who obviously never cared about him whatsoever and was only out for himself. So they split Abyss from EY and put him with Magnus just so that relationship could implode a few weeks later. This does not make Abyss look very bright, and it really demonstrates just how sloppy, haphazard, and poorly constructed this whole storyline has been, because there's plot holes left, right, and center, and the logic holding the whole thing together is flimsy at best. I don't know if this creative team has any kind of story editor, but they could really, really use one.
And that's the fishing line, 'cause Shark Boy said so.
Then MVP books Magnus versus Abyss, where if Abyss wins, he gets a TNA contract, even though not having a TNA contract never stopped Abyss from appearing on the show or getting mic time or wrestling in sanctioned matches or doing anything he shouldn't have been able to do. Just saying. So that was the opener. Kind of a hit and a miss at the same time here. The performances and the promos themselves were quite good, I thought. But in order to enjoy the story behind them, you really had to turn your brain off. Speaking of turning your brain off, why was the final hype for the Sacrifice main event all about Magnus and Abyss when it should have been about Magnus and Eric Young? So Magnus and Abyss is the main event. It's passable, I suppose, though this really is not a great matchup for either of them. But they really booked themselves into a corner here because neither guy could afford to lose. If Abyss loses, he doesn't get a contract and he gets his balls cut off right after he reaffirmed himself as a monster. And if Magnus loses, then he looks even more pathetically weak right before he headlines Sacrifice on Sunday. So there were really no good options here. But the DQ finish seemed to cover some of the bases at least. Abyss gets a contract for the DQ victory, and Magnus couldn't get the win, of course, but he at least looked somewhat dangerous at the end of the night, which is a step in the right direction, I guess. But really, so much damage was done to Magnus during his horribly booked world title reign that it's going to be a big uphill battle for people to accept him as a top guy right now. You could tell the audience wasn't buying into it. He looked so weak for the last few months that to suggest that he's a believable threat to anyone at this stage, even Eric Young, just doesn't hold water. Personally, I think the best thing they could do for Magnus right now would probably be to just take a step back, bring him down to the mid-card, and try to rebuild him for a while, because I think his run as the top heel may have done him more harm than good in some ways. And not through any real fault of his own either, which is the really unfortunate part. This go-home show did manage to address every match on the Sacrifice card, but it didn't do a great job making me excited for most of them. I have to question TNA's decision to put Sacrifice on pay-per-view because this really feels more like an Impact on Sunday to me. I think if they had done one of the pay-per-view themed Impacts for Sacrifice, that would feel a lot more appropriate because TNA really need to be bringing their A-game in a big way on pay-per-view these days, and it just doesn't feel like that's what we're getting here. Still, Sacrifice might be good. Or it might not. I don't have huge expectations, but who knows, maybe they'll surprise me. I'll see you guys afterward. Over. Out.